How was everybody this morning? How was that early panel? Were there correct? It's funny, we talked a lot about assessments. This session is going to talk about how we're trying to change faculty perceptions on how to do assessments and think about equitable grading practices. But it starts to make me a question I was going to ask, and I wonder if you see if this resonates with anybody in the room. How much are we going to ask our students to be able to do things without Gen AI versus with Gen AI? So that I think it's a really powerful one. If my students, someone's going to be practicing with a calculator. Well, and Jennifer keeps saying, I can't believe that I used to tell students you can't have a calculator. I feel like the idea of Johnny can't read. Somebody can come up and they say, well, analyze this passage, and if without Gen AI, they're flummoxed, they can't do it. But with Gen AI, oh, here's how we can analyze a passage. Can you write a poem? Nope, can't write a poem without computers. But with Gen AI, they can write a poem. Like, how much of that can you write code? Well, with Gen AI, I can put the prompt in, I get some code writing, but without it, I can't. So it's how much am I look forward 5 or 10 years, how much are we going to be able to say, well, in the industry, they all use the tools with them, they use a calculator, so why can't the students bring the calculator with them? Can I hold the line and say, nope, you've got to be able to read and write programs, without any support, and how much, they've had support all K-12, and now they get to my class, and I say, nope, you can't use the tools at all. I want to be able to ban it, be able to say, yeah, you learn how to program in my class without any tools that are going to give the answer to you or support you. You can use them to learn, but now it's time to assess. That's not, so anyway, I'm grappling with the future of assessment, whether I can ban it or not ban it for that. So anyway, any other thoughts about how are you going to navigate the future together?
Two-part exam.
Sorry?
Two-part exam.
Two-part exam. I mean,
Assessments,
two-part assessments, like Gen AI proof assessments, maybe. You can't. The olden days you'd say write a code that does this, but if you just paste that into it literally it's the perfect answer. It's better than the TA's answer, better than my answer often. It's color coded. So can I not ask that anymore? Is that something I can't ask, or can I still ask that question? That's it. We're all needing to balance all these things. Wow, full rooms. This is so exciting. We're really happy to have you all here. This is going to be wonderful. Should I wait till the 40? They said wait till the thing, or should we just go? We're full. We're ready. I think we're ready to go. All right. Sure. So welcome to our session on A's for All as time and interest allow. This is our team. I'm Dan Garcia from UC Berkeley, and I'll pass it to my other.
I'm Neal Terrell from Cal State Long Beach.
Solomon Russell from Berkeley College.
And all the folks who are here on the top row, and Armando Fox, my colleague from UC Berkeley, and Edward Ambrosio from El Camino are also part of our large team. We're part of 2 different grants as part of the California Education Learning Lab. First of all, thinking about the A's for All, and then how to scale A's for All more broadly. So those are the 2 pieces of that grant. So this is my pitch to you all, which is, and I gave this a little bit in the lightning talk yesterday, learning as it usually happens in education in higher ed institutions all around the world, is that students come in with various degrees of prior preparation, and they also come in with various degrees of natural aptitude. And those are all confounding factors, you don't know. And they come in, and at the end of the day, they get A through F grades. And we all seem to be happy with that. No one, we had lots of protests about labor and unions and things, but I don't see anybody protesting this. I don't see anybody feeling there's a problem that students get W, D, and F grades at the end of the year. I know we all feel bad about it, but no one's changing that. So I think that we're all mostly agreed that the world is fixed time. Your students have 10 weeks or 15 weeks if you're on a semester, and variable learning. So the income is a bell curve and the output is a bell curve, and we all seem to be happy with that. And I'd like to not be happy with that. So Benjamin Bloom, 56 years ago, talked about the idea of mastery learning. Could you have to master some earlier concepts before you moved on to later concepts? And you're not allowed to even move on to it. It doesn't even unlock until you master the early concepts. I don't give you the key to the motorcycle until you can ride the bicycle all around the driveway and all around town. So this idea is called fixed learning, variable time. It may take one student more time than another student. That should be okay. And in the one-room schoolhouse, that used to happen that way. The wonderful instructor was managing 12 different levels and working individually with each person, and they don't give them the next book. You have a piano class, the next book, until you've mastered that earlier book. So this really could push achievement very, very positively. So our project is called A's for All, and we usually have a 40-slide deck where I have to convince hearts and minds, and we're kind of compressing that into, assuming you're on board with that now, this is the philosophy of A's for All. The principle is A's for all as time and interest allowed. The first and most important idea I have to have you all walk away with is we are not lowering the standard. There was a piece, an opinion piece in the New York Times that says if everyone gets an A, no one gets an A. And that came out just after they revealed that I think Yale students were getting like 90% A's or something like that. And that is the case. If you just lower standards so everyone gets an A is meaningless now. What is an A? A is participation points. It's like here's your trophy for coming to the gymnastics event. So the key is in all of our work, the bar is not being lowered. The bar was exactly the same as it always was. For us, we're still using points. A lot of the A's for a lot of the master grading work is that throw points in the bucket and then start talking about mastery concepts. I'm still using points, but the idea is my points for the A haven't changed. It was 450 out of 500 for an A. It's that way it's the same. So it's exactly the same. But the idea is you allow them more time to get to that. So now I say, here's the bar. Someone else set this bar. It's on the wall. That's what 450 points gets you to the A. But I'm going to now be your coach and your support person and help you with as much opportunities to get to that bar as possible. So this is the key, that it changes the whole philosophy, the belief that every student can succeed. It's really, rather than a gatekeeper course, it's really kind of a big tent approach. Anyone can get an A. In fact, I would love for all of you to get an A. Let's all work together to support each other to build a learning community to do that. This is really critical for a sense of belonging in introductory courses. You've got students who come out of an intro course. I teach a non-majors course called The Beauty and Joy of Computing. I've been teaching that for roughly 15 years or so. And I want students to walk out of my course saying, yes, I can be a computer scientist, or I can use it in my career. I see computing as a role for me in my life. 15 years ago, before I really adopted the A's for All philosophy, students would walk away from my course getting a C, D, or F and saying, I guess it wasn't for me. And I feel so bad about all those students of generations of students that I could have, if I had just known this, could have said, no, let's actually let you work beyond the semester. Let's change the structure. I used to have very rigid deadlines. I've changed all those philosophies. So if the students don't get to mastery or don't get to the grade that they want to get, we don't really have a pithy word to say. Essentially, this is students are allowed to work to get whatever grade they're willing to earn if they have the time and the interest. If you're a senior, you don't have the time to move on. If you're not a major, I'm a Japanese major and I'm taking a computer science course, you know what? I don't really need this for my Japanese career. I don't need to do that. So they don't have the interest. But if you have the time and the interest, I'm going to support you in getting the grade that you want. That's the idea of this philosophy. And so students can maybe work after the course afterwards. Maybe you can take the course and break it down into smaller pieces. We've had this for our self-paced program where you had a 1-unit course, a 2-unit course, a 3-unit course, and you get different amounts of units depending on how many of those units you've mastered that semester. So here are our 10, we had a recent position paper that we put together. These are our 10 equitable grading policies. And actually for yourself, kind of make a note for yourself. And if there's a single slide to take a picture of, this is the slide to take a picture of that we're advocating. So this whole group is about advocating for these 10, step 1. And step 2 is providing some tooling and giving you some examples of how we've done this in our classrooms and kind of some success stories. So absolute grading says throw the curve away and just have on the board what it takes to earn an A, B, C, etc. and put it on the board and say, I'm not going to be a coach for that. A clobbered exam says your exams are cumulative, which is not that hard to do. Usually a final is more hours in the midterm, which is more hours in the first quiz. And so if you ever get a higher grade on a later exam than an earlier exam, you just overwrite. You say, like, this exam was actually covering the midterm material, and you're showing me you're an A student here, so let's make your midterm be an A as well. Plentiful practice means create a structure where you can have lots of chances for exercise and lots of chances for practice, as much as you need. Again, that's part of the master learning model. Untimed exams is a big deal. Many students, neurodivergent students who kind of just work a little slower, would love to be able to say, I can do this if you just give me the whole day to work on it. It's not about how much can I show you in 1 hour or half an hour or 2-hour exam. Flexible extension says that life gets in the way for many students. Could we have the ability to have flexibility with your deadlines? Some people have slip days, sometimes tokens that you submit for that. That's one model of doing it. We basically said, whatever you need. Equity is about giving students what they need. So if a student says, actually, I had some trouble. I was sick last week and I had to run home to LA, blah, blah, blah. Okay, how much time do you need? I think I need a week and a half. Done. There's a week and a half, and you get a week and a half. And hopefully you can build a class so that at the end of the semester, there's some open time for students to finish things they didn't finish earlier in the semester. Proficiency, not points, is a whole movement to say, remove the points. This is Joe Feldman and other folks are saying in Grading for Equity book he writes about, let's take points away, stop talking about these fungible things. Students shouldn't be ever talking about points, but talking about learning. I should be able to, I believe I've mastered this topic. It's talking about topics rather than points. I want a point here and a point there. You shouldn't talk about points. As I said, I've kept points just because I want to be able to compare with my other semesters before when I didn't do this, to show, my thought leaders, my deans, that I'm doing the same thing I was before. Exam retakes says that could you actually give a chance to take the exam again? In fact, last semester I had 5 retakes. So you take a midterm and you do well in the first 2 questions, but you bomb the last 3. So then the next week you get another chance with an untimed exam to take the question, and you already have the first 2 points in your pocket. They're already yours. So now you only have to take the questions you didn't master. And they're new questions. They're brand new sets of questions. So I have many, many backup questions, and I have a next set of questions, and you take those next one. And then you mastered the 3rd one. Okay, then the next week is another retake. You don't have to take the 4th and the 5th because you already have 1st, 2nd, 3rd, you've already shown mastery. So it's the max across every topic is the final grade. Asynchronous exam says it lets students work with their own schedule rather than everybody has to show up at 7 p.m. on some evening on a Wednesday. Quizzes over midterms is a whole new movement to say, rather than really high stakes exams, you could have these small little quizzes every week, and that could just count for it. So throw midterms away and just have quizzes all semester. It keeps the students on track with that. And working beyond the term is really the most controversial of all. Does your institution support the ability for students to work beyond the term if they didn't get to the grade they want to get by the end? And that required a lot of conversations with our dean, but she blessed it, and now we do it at Berkeley. It's pretty exciting. A small pilot stage, not for everybody, but we're doing it and we're having some success. It's great. Not everybody though, not everybody's succeeding there, but it is working. About 10% of the students actually are working. Just so we got, out of 200 students I have in my intro class, I have about 20 students who say yes, I will work beyond the term. And of the 20 who do, only 10 actually do finish the work. The other 10 said, I tried, but I didn't do anything. And their grade rolls back to whatever it was at the end anyway. So there's no loss to anybody to let somebody jump into that pool. If they don't do it, that's whatever they had at the end of the semester anyway. But 10% say I'll try it. Really only 5% really actually finish it and improve their grade. So how do we get there? If you're all on board with this idea and all on board with some of these philosophies, some of the things, I almost got it. Can you show me? I really wanted this is for fun. 10 fingers. Show me how many of these you do in your classes. I'm really curious to see. Am I in a room of 9s and 10s and 8s? So 2 hands, ready, go. Everybody raise hands. You can raise no hands, no fingers at all to say I do none of them. I'm going to learn, or I do many of them. Let me just look at it now. Let's look at it. I've got 6, and I think I have 8. So 6, 5, 6. Look at it. 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 4, 4, 5, 4. Yeah, look at this. I'm already seeing 8 over there in the back. Wonderful. I'm so happy to hear this. Delightful. Well, let's move to kind of 8, 9s, and 10s here if we can. All right. So what's the mechanism to get there? Step 1, you've got to have the students available to practice whenever they need to. They need to be able to have that chance to work that space in the formative assessment model like for free. They need to be able to just as much practice as much. You need tracking to see both from the student's point of view, how am I doing? How am I doing? Show me how am I doing? How am I working toward mastery? And the instructors need to be able to look at the system and say, how's my class doing? And you need automation. You need to automate the question generation, which is part of the practice. And you also need to automate the work after the semester. If I scale to 2,000 students, that's gonna be 200 students working after the semester. How do I manage 200 students submitting work all asynchronously? So you gotta be able to work that as well. So if you had a model in which you had small scale, this is a piano teacher or a golf coach or something, this is very easy. You can get as much practice as you want. That amazing veteran teacher can continue to generate questions and push you exactly where you are, keep you in the zone, if you will. The question's not too hard, not too easy. It's just exactly the right space, generate new ones, know when you've had mastery. That's amazing. That's what that kind of one-on-one coach or piano teacher would be able to do. How does this work at scale? So one of the things we do, we got to automate that process. We need to almost Khan Academy-ify this model where it says it knows who you are. That might have been anything that hasn't been invented on the basis, but you're trying to put it all together on one slide there. So students come in with some prior preparation, and you have some individual way. This is not necessarily with AI, by the way. Almost none of this slide deck has anything to do with AI. You could imagine part 2 of this where you add AI to everything, but right now this is not AI thinking about this. This is students working individually with the system, and when they show mastery, the system says, yes, I know you've done mastery, and it moves you on to the harder problems. So we have a system that we're using to be able to dynamically randomize the problem generation to be able to do that. That system is called PrairieLearn. We have no vested stakes in this tool. We just happen to be fans of it, so we happen to point to it as the best tool we've seen so far. But again, no no vested interest in this. It's created by the University of Illinois. We know the team, we work with them, they're great. It's free and open source if you roll it on your own. So there's two models I'm gonna show you. This is the logo where it was something you can download their GitHub and you can run it yourself and with an AWS instance. Or I'll show you the next page where it's kind of more a commercialized version, get more support for that. But this is their logo for the free version. Other universities have adopted it, and here's the key idea that's different than it. It's not Canvas, it's not Sakai, it's not the systems you've seen in Google Classroom. It is a system for storing questions, and you're not just storing questions, you're writing question generators. That was the aha, is that rather than just one question, that, hey, like that question, for example, the simplest one is Khan Academy, first question in addition, add two numbers up. You're a first grader, add two numbers up. Well, Khan Academy says, the first number is a random number from 2 to 5. The second number is a random number 2 to 5. And now I've got a question generator, which is I keep saying, make a new question, generate a random number here, random number here. Now it's 3 plus 4. Oh, I got that one right. Again, now it's 5 plus 2. Hey, that's very different. Same answer, but different thing. Now you gotta watch out. I gave those numbers for a reason. When it happens to be 5 plus 5, that's a harder question because that has carry. Because 10 is carry the 1. So you got to make sure very careful when you're writing these question generators to have all the variants be equal, be the same difficulty. It's very easy to have some combination make a much harder problem that's unfair for some students. So you have to be very careful when you write these. But these question generators can be really, really powerful and very rich. This is a set of the question generators that I'm just pulling up that come from PrairieLearn that you can look at as example questions. On the left, it's a graph and the student says y equals f of x, where they give 3 different f of x's for different values of x, and they're supposed to actually graph, they're supposed to trace what the piecewise quadratic. So here's a curve, and here's a curve, and it's continuous, but it's 3 different curves that make this beautiful shape, and they have to be able to trace it and be able to graph it on the graph. It's not just click one of the, point at them, it's not multiple choice. It is actually interact with this graph in a clever way. The second picture is a statics question, which is, if these are shapes and you wanted to poke a hole at them, what's the centroid? What's the center of mass that if you spun it on the board, it would like spin without going wobble, wobble, wobble. The right two are questions from a class that I teach in computer architecture. That's a Boolean circuit that has generated, there's like 300 possible circuits that come up, and your job is to look at the circuit, write the circuit down, and then use Boolean algebra to simplify it to the simplest form. Maybe it's just A and B or something. On the right, this is a computer architecture data path on a CPU. And those are the wires of the data path of how the memory and the register and the ALU are being used. And I'm looking at one memory, and each of the boxes, you can zoom in if you like, allow me to see what is the value of that signal. Is it a 1 or a 0 or I don't care? Really powerful. This is very engaging, more than just point at them, do this. This is a very authentic, very rich question. And these can be used for homework or projects or practice or exams. And that's the PrairieLearn logo for the company version, which gives you more support and official. Now you don't have to roll your own instance. You can just pay them a fraction of that and they can roll that into maybe the student cost. People are worried about how you take these exams. I don't trust mine. How many of you trust your students to take exams at home and it's totally fine, there's no cheating? Very few hands go up. I do for my non-majors class, but I don't for my sophomore high impact majors class in architecture. So non-majors, almost no cheating. The majors class, I typically have 5–10% cheating for just projects and they share and they panic and get it from their neighbors and we use Moss and we pick up about 10%, 5–10% cheating. So that's happening with cheating. I'm not sure where exams are really where the grade gets determined. I'm really worried about that. So enter, and this is also something that UIUC pioneered, the Illinois group, an idea of a computer-based testing facility, or CBTF. It's a place where you could send your students. It's run by campus. It's staffed by campus, not even your TAs. And the students walk in, they show their ID, and they say, oh, look, boop, 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 boop. Okay, you've got 2 exams you can take this week. One in calculus, one in physics. Which one do you want to take? I think I'll take the calculus question. Okay, great. Calculus, boop, 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 boop. Okay, you're over in this kiosk right here. Your neighbors are not going to be taking calculus either, so you can't look left and right because the system knows that your neighbors shouldn't be the same class as you, and you got exactly an hour, starts in the hour, ends the next hour, go. And everybody takes this exam. Pretty amazing. And you can kind of offload the worry of having to, as I said, I teach at scale, my classes are about 1,000 students. So for me to run an exam with every other seat empty, I have to reserve 2,000 seats. The largest room on campus is only 800. So I'm now reserving probably 7 or 8 classrooms. It's a huge logistical challenge. Imagine if I just send them to this room. That would be amazing. And if you're at small scale, if you're teaching to 20 students, you can be the CBTF in your room. All right, folks, load this off. We're ready to go. We're taking exams. So the idea of you don't need this if you're at smaller scale. But this is an amazing system, and my colleague Armando Fox is really leading the initiative to that. There's also a UC testing working group to try to have this across all the UCs. We're trying to see what that actually will have more expansion. Pretty exciting about that. I talked about tracking. How do students know they have achieved mastery? Kind of our second grant was, could we build a concept map, which is a graphical visualization of the topics and all the prerequisite topics that need to be learned before the later topics. Remember, mastery has to happen in the early topics before you move on to later topics. This is a graph that you can interact with. I can show you a little demo of this. You can interact with this, and there's levels of mastery. It's basically like Khan Academy's mastery levels, but you can see the whole shape. And as you're taking this more and more retake exams, these things are becoming more and more deeper blue, showing you've mastered those things. So if you need to know, what question do I need to take next week? You look at the ones that are really not mastered and take those questions, and the ones that are deep blue, then you've mastered, you can skip those questions. It's really amazing to have that in your left page as you're taking the exam on the right. Pretty nice. And on the right, it's kind of a dashboard. You have these dashboards in Canvas or Beat courses or Sakai or anything. So this is my last slide before I hand it off to my collaborators. I talked about asynchronous work automation. You've got to be able to support the idea that students are working beyond the semester, but you're in Tahoe. You're not with them. How do they submit the work automatically and get credit for it and get it registered? And so we have to build a system that just is like a server, just waiting for students to submit work. So this is our proposed work that we're still doing. We're kind of adding this to the end of it. So here's a student. They're working with PrairieLearn. They perform. This is like in January when the semester's over and they're all working independently. They're taking some work and they're finishing up some work and some tests, maybe finishing a project, and they're getting feedback as they're doing it. And finally, they say, "I'm done." And they send a work to the system. There's a little line that didn't get there. It says, "Update my Project 5 score." So that Project 5 score comes around and tells the director. The director's like waiting to get some command. Update the Project 5 score. The director, with an API call, with an authenticated API call, calls into whatever is managing the assessment. Is it PrairieLearn? Is it Gradescope? Is it Canvas? Whatever it is, it queries that system and says, what's their current Project 5 score? It says they have 90. So what's their Project 5 score? It says it's a 90. So I push this in because they've worked with this. The system now knows it's a 90. So this director doesn't know anything that it's a 90. It says, what's their Project 5 score? It says a 90. They said, update my Project 5 score. Now they say, okay, now I have a 90 in my right hand. Now they push into the grade logic, which might be a different system. The way you have your managed grades might be different. If it's Canvas, it's the same system, but maybe it's a different system here at Berkeley, it's different. So say, what's the current grade? The system says the current grade's a B. They say, well, what if I store in Project 5 score is now a 90? Now what's their grade? It said, by the way, the student's getting feedback of this, that, oh, wow, my grade's been updated. This is so nice. And it's happened automatically within a minute. It says their new grade's an A. The director doesn't even know whether the A or B is better. They're different. And hopefully the grades only go up. And so he says, okay, I've got an A. All right, well, let me push to the registrar. Could I have a secure call to the registrar? Right now, there's like 5 forms I need to fill in to update a grade if they're getting it incomplete. It's unbelievably painful. Could I lubricate that process to make it automated? And we've actually had conversations with the registrar offices like, we can actually build an API. We need to kind of make sure it's limited in scope and all that. Maybe there's a new category saying not yet proficient rather than incomplete. And maybe that's the thing that only that's able to be overridden. But it's pretty exciting. They push to the registrar. The registrar then emails in and says, by the way, your grade's been updated to an A. Congratulations. All this happens in January while we're on ski slopes. So that's pretty amazing if we can automate this whole process and really take the pain out of the 15 forms that I have to fill in to do that. Let me now hand it over to Solomon to finish up and talk about how the ECC has worked with.
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Solomon Russell from Camino College. So I just wanted to talk about some of the results that we had for this project. So there was 2 grants, the one we got in 2020 and then the one we got in 2022. So after 2020 grant, we ran PrairieLearn in 3 different courses. Our CS7 course, which is analogous to Dan's large non-majors course, Beauty and Joy of Computing. We also had our Foundations of Data Science and then Intro Python. So one thing that we found with El Camino is that we don't have particularly the same issues that Berkeley has because we have a lot less students. I do not see 1,000 students in one class. I might see 22. Right, or 44. So this was really great. We were able to give multiple exams to students to allow them to raise their grades, flexible extensions, a lot of the practices that we talked about. But and we got a lot of feedback, some formative feedback of this was great, wonderful, right? In our 2022 grant, which was really our scaling grant, we looked around and we said, how can we scale this and these processes to actually have a greater impact? So in the community college level, this was around the time that AB 705 was rolling out, and luckily enough, I'm in the computer science department, so I didn't have to. But I heard all of this grumbling, right? And a lot of the grumbling you probably heard. But one result was that we had already one of our huge classes, which was statistics, was going to have even more students in it. So we thought about how can we roll this out in a way that would help students, and also roll this out for faculty. If we start coming to faculty with, hey, there's this great idea of flexible extensions, retake exams, without having the tooling, that's going to be a very short conversation. So after talking to math faculty, we found out that our largest class, over half of our sections use a product called MyStatLab, which is expensive. It's about $85 to $95 if you get a bundle. I gave a demo, and then the faculty said, I think this can do everything that MyStatLab can do, right? And then when we talk to them more and more, we realize that there's already free solutions out there, right? There's MyOpenMath, that if you're using that, great, continue to use it, it's wonderful, right? But what we found is a lot of really progressive teachers weren't going to switch over to some other free products, because they have been teaching statistics for 15 years, and all of their notes were in a particular way with a particular notation. I see some heads nodding, right? So if you're a math professor and you come in and you have to teach statistics and you build this whole curriculum, and then you get set up into a company or a publisher's technology, you're kind of stuck. So what we did is we said, can we build the functionality of MyStatLab with PrairieLearn? And we have been able to. So, and the great thing about it is we've been able to with faculty and student input. So here is a question. This is an automatically generated question, a histogram question. And we spent a lot of time working on the hints. And then the procedural feedback that we get to students, because that was a place where we saw that it was lacking in maybe some of the solutions that were out there already. So we've added procedural hints, formulas, calculator hints, and we are starting to pilot that. That should say, we started to pilot it in fall 2020, this fall. And we started to get feedback. And the preliminary feedback we just gave out our first exam is that this is as good, basically, as MyStatLab. We have a lot less questions. We have a lot less questions. They have maybe 2,000. We have about, we'll have about 400, but still it's enough to give a minimally viable product so that teachers can use it. That's great. Great.
Hi, my name is Neal Terrell. I'm a lecturer at Cal State Long Beach in the computer science department. This might have yours.
I'm sorry. All right, good. All right, the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, again, as part of our first grants, we spent most of our time working on PrairieLearn set of questions for 2 different courses, one in introductory to programming in Python and one in databases. We still use those. This big database of over 300 questions. You know, they're randomized, so a student takes one variant of a question, then they get a different variant of the question, allows us to give them homework where they're taking the same topic repeated with different variations. Some students, we do quizzes, we do exams with them. And my favorite part of PrairieLearn that I don't know that came through in the slides is that when a student takes an exam in PrairieLearn, they answer the questions immediately graded. Even if it's like a complicated coding question, we give them immediate feedback. And if you want to choose so, you can have them take the question again with that feedback so that they can sort of show growth during the exam instead of just getting the question wrong and moving on. They get a chance to differentiate themselves from someone who has no idea what they're doing and is going to get the question wrong on their second and third chance. But this student who made a small mistake on the first attempt can then actually correct it during the exam and therefore show a higher level proficiency. Unfortunately, after that grant was done, I would no longer get to teach that class. They found other people to teach it. spent all this time into making the questions, but the faculty who do teach it now, they still use the system. We still support them, using PrairieLearn for their exams. They love it. We're able to onboard 3 or 4 different faculty who had never taught introductory Python before, give them all these resources, these sort of pre-built question generators for their homework and exams, and it made their life a lot easier learning to teach this class for the first time. They still do use traditional grading systems. So even though we focus on some more equitable grading strategies, or what we proposed with those 10 strategies earlier, there still is a place for a lot of what we've done in a traditional graded classroom. But in terms of the second grant, what I wanted to do was sort of apply some of these A's for All initiatives in the upper division classes that I teach. So I teach a programming languages course, a search engines course, and a computer graphics course. One of those is required, the others are electives. And for those courses, I give a very formal set of learning objectives for the class, sort of focused on verbs and actions, like I want students to be able to do these things. I'm sure you're all familiar with this idea. And then of the sort of things we proposed, I use contractor specifications grading, clobber grading, flexible extensions, and then a mix of low and high stakes assessments. And what I feel is most beneficial to students is we sort of lift the focus on, instead of stressing and scrounging for as many points as possible to get the grade that I want, we put that mindset towards how can I show proficiency, how can I prove that I can do these things, and therefore demonstrate that I have accomplished the goals of the course. So just one example, this is from, I think, my computer graphics course. I have 8 objectives in that course. We do contract grading, so depending on the level of proficiency shown for each objective, we then assign a grade at the end of the class. This really cuts down on nagging about curving at the end of the semester. We just point to the contract. But we grade on a level of 1 to 4, where 4 is excellent or exceeds proficiency, and then 1 is not yet proficient. Every assessment aligns with those objectives. And then my big focus is on giving multiple attempts at each objective. So it's not just a one-time thing where you take the midterm, you don't do well, it's a permanent mark against you. Instead, you try an assessment, it doesn't go well for you because any number of reasons in your outside life means you couldn't really prepare for that. Later on in the semester, you get other attempts at doing it. It could be through an exam retake, it could just be through another authentic assessment for that objective. So here's an example, in computer graphics, we do lighting. So there's a light source in a room and there's some surface you're trying to determine the color of that surface for this beautiful computer graphics application. So a student might have taken an in-class worksheet. It's kind of like a quiz where they work with a partner and they get some feedback. And they earn maybe 2 points on that because they didn't really have enough time to study for this before class. Midterm comes around, the question is a little harder. They also only got 2 points on it, but then, you know, to me, implementing that objective, you can do it through an in-class exam, but also they do programming projects. And if they can code that shader for doing this reflection model and then demo it to me, we can have an authentic discussion about what they learned through that process. That to me is just as strong of evidence that they've achieved this particular objective as an in-class assessment would be. And then at that time they got 3 points on that project, and then there's many ways to combine those scores. I do max score grading, so the highest grading you get is the grade that you got overall. So the student got 3 points on this objective. That contributes to the overall grade in the class according to that contract. And they come out of it with a sense of, even though I struggled on this objective early on, I achieved it at the level I was hoping for by the end. And to me, it doesn't matter that it took them longer to get there. 2 students who achieve the same end result, to me, deserve the same grade, even if one mastered it right away and the other one took a little bit longer. So that's how I sort of achieve that in my classes. Student perception, I piloted this, I think last summer 2023. It was really stressful teaching the class for the first time in summer over just 5 weeks. But I also maybe insanely decided to try this new approach as well. The students really resonated with it. They felt like the grading system was not hard for them to understand. I was really shocked about that. I thought I was doing something crazy and they would have a very hard time understanding how to get the grade that they wanted, but they generally received or reported pretty high understanding of the actual grading scheme, and they felt it was very clear for them how they could achieve the grade that they wanted. They felt like the contract and the multiple attempts at each assessment made it much more clear in their mind how I can actually earn that A, instead of just stressing for every single assessment, I gotta do everything I possibly can. It was more like, okay, I can earn this objective for this assignment, I can plan to do this kind of assessment for the other objective, and then that's how I'm going to earn my A. They were very much in favor of having multiple attempts at showing mastery of an objective, of course. It's a very bad feeling to do really poorly on an exam when that's a permanent mark against your grade, but when that exam is not something permanent that can be overridden by clobbered assessments later on, then that's a very well-received feature of the classes. And then generally students felt like their grade would have been lower if the class was in a traditional grading scheme than with the scheme that we had used in this class. And again, this is a summer class. The students who sign up, at least in my experience, are generally excellent students because they're paying extra money to be there and giving up their time at the beach or with family. So they're generally more motivated. I'm gonna rerun this study in the fall classes that I'm doing right now. And then overall, what I think is really important to me personally is that students believe that the grade they earned really does reflect their learning, and mostly positive feelings about that amongst the students that I surveyed.
That's our slide deck. Do you want to show a demo? Solomon, you had a thing? I can just, if I can pull up, I think I can do this, just show what the concept map looks like. So this is the concept map. We've written this in a very lightweight way, that the concept map takes two inputs. One, it takes a file that describes the layout of your class. So if I look at this class, here's my class CS10. This is an interactive, we kind of grab this online. You can collapse any one of these things. So just click on it, it can collapse. So you can collapse and then grow it back up like that, which is really nice. You can then zoom in and see where I am in this example, my students have only taken the quest. The projection's not very bright here, but here's the levels of mastery. So you have in that file that they both authored these files. So all three of us have authored files that actually work in this. This is an example of the file. You get to choose how many layers of mastery. And essentially the software figures out, okay, the leftmost is always going to be probably first steps. You haven't started yet. The rightmost is going to be mastered. And then in the middle, if you want to have 10 levels of mastery or 2 or 3, you can choose what you want. You can choose the colors for all these things. It's really very flexible in that sense. Then you load in what the file of the hierarchy is. It's just kind of a tree, essentially, of what your knowledge is based on the course, and then the next levels, as much as you want, as much as you're keeping record of. And then here's the cool thing. The argument to this, if I can I zoom? I don't know if I can zoom. I can zoom on my screen, it doesn't zoom here. The URL passes in, if you look at the URL, it passes in a number that says for all of the elements, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, 9, like it just basically numbers them from the top to bottom. You give an argument of just the numbers, which means there's no authentication to this. This is just a standalone app that anybody can use to be able to specify the numbers. It doesn't have like that. This didn't have to look into that. The logic of how a particular student did and then take what, oh, well, they got a 50 out of 100. That's about a half. So that should be about the middle color. That should be out of 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe that's a 2. So the calculation of 2 is external to this, but then it just passes the number 2 in a string into the URL. So we're building a system that anybody can use without having to connect it to your particular login. It's just a site that we can give away to anybody, and you pass it as the argument. Here's the file that's going to contain the table, the kind of the structure, and here's the file of numbers, and it just draws it. It's really very elegant in that way. And I want to pat my developers. They came up with that idea. It wasn't mine. So I think it's really very clever to be able to make that not authenticated. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll show my.
Oh yeah, show your thing. Yeah, show your class.
So
I'll trade you shares.
thanks. So just to show you some of the questions that we are actually demoing right now. Let's look at. Let's call this Call Me Beeple. So it's pretty much like any other system that you'll see. These are all randomized questions or numbers that you can have. Though I'm so proud of my students. I'm so proud of my students because I just said, hey, you know, PrairieLearn can do this stuff. It's great. And I would really like to really enhance the amount of feedback that you can give, because that's really what students and teachers were asking for. So, let's just put in, oh, here we go, sorry. And they gave me hints. And these hints have all of the information that a student would need, hopefully, in order to solve this question, which is really great for those formative assessments, where we have the definitions that a student would need, we have the process with the numbers that are actually in the question, step by step. We have formulas that they would need for this, and then also calculator. And calculator examples. One of the things that I haven't seen from other homework systems was this, and this was direct feedback that we got from students that were using it. And in the feedback that we're getting, this is very useful. Yes.
I love this, and we're thinking about, I'm from UC Santa Barbara, we're looking at using PrairieLearn as well. Tell me about who helps you do the coding for your courses?
That's the best
How
part.
many people?
Yeah.
How much time? I want like nuts and bolts specific.
So I'll start with
Who to hire?
Yeah.
And yes.
Well, I'll start with the who, which I think is really interesting here at El Camino at a community college, because usually we have students for 2 years.
Yeah.
They go up, hopefully we have two students for 2 years. Sometimes we have them for longer, but we have them for 2 years. And then with this project, we've been able to do something really innovative. The initial grant, we were at El Camino just gonna use what Berkeley created. And then after a year, I said, we have great students.
Yeah.
Why don't we do it as well? So we've been hiring students. And then as those students have moved on to UCLA, to Berkeley, to Cal State Long Beach, they've continued to work with us. So we've had a span.
How many?
It's fluctuated. Well, for me, it's difficult because I've had, over the lifetime of this, probably like 15 students come and go, and then that's always dependent upon how much they work is dependent upon what they're doing that semester. Yeah. Do you guys have questions, answers of how?
I've been developing with students for about 5 years. It started with the pandemic. We asked our college engineering, they said, do you need some money to handle COVID? We said, yes. Before they finished, they said, yes. And so we put a form in and they gave it back to us. And so we had some money to hire some students that summer of 2020, all online, obviously, right? So, and that, I started that. So I basically started that conversation. I had some students, I said, I have some ideas for questions that I have. Here's what I have. I've been writing exams for 10 years on paper. Here's a PDF. Can you put the PDF question to PrairieLearn? And can you think of ways to make variations of it? So I had my students think, oh, that's a good, they call it a stem. It's a stem and the leaves might grow off the side of the stem. So the students all took my old exams. I pointed 10 years of exams and they just took those exams and then ran with them. Those exams are all public. So I said, just grab them and make new versions, and that version won't be public. And so we keep them inside the silo. And so basically since 2020, 2020, when COVID hit, I've had about 5 or 10 students every semester. And they just get credit. I don't pay them. I mean, some of the money comes from the grant, but I mean, essentially these students.
Talk about that.
But the students are part of our development team. They're actually thinking about some of them are writing curriculum, some they're writing assessments, some of them are actually writing features. Someone say, there was no feedback in the checkbox form. So one developer says, I would like that, but there was in the drop down. So they said, I want to add that. So they've added features to PrairieLearn. It was open source. They're like, thank you so much. You're amazing. And so we're contributing to that code base. So roughly 10 students a semester to help with that. And it's continued with that. Yeah, it's been great. A lot of questions. This is good. Yeah, I think we're at the end of our presentation. I'm happy to take any question. In the back, yeah, and then right in front. Yeah, yeah.
So I have a few questions. One, you mentioned myopen math at the beginning, but I'm seeing that this is way deeper than myopen math because that's what I do.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing this adaptation that's deeper, and I'm wondering, does that code transfer, or are you guys willing to share the work that you've already done? So that we're not recreating the same things that you've already created.
Okay, so the first question was, can we use myopen math questions?
Like the transfer code or whatever, because those are coded as well.
Yeah, not directly. So we would have to look at the question and actually put it into the system. And all the work that we do is open source and it's free now it's not the easiest thing of, transferring the questions, but you're happy to have whatever things that we create and use them as well.
Yeah, and the same, if you happen to teach our flavor of you enjoy computing class, here's some questions you could use, and again, we've handed them to Solomon, who's loved them, and added some to them, which we've loved as
Is
well.
that on purpose?
Yeah, they just all started on GitHub. It's pretty
Oh.
nice. So it's not publicly accessible, but give it, we give you access to that if you like. Yeah, it's wonderful. I'd love to have more collaborators there. Yeah, you had a question.
So I wanted to actually go back to that earlier point when we were talking about the 10 strategies
Oh, yeah,
and how
sure.
critical,
Hold on, yeah.
you know, the absolute grading approach
Yeah,
is.
okay.
And yet, I guess, how are you selling that with, at least for, you know, not faculty in this room, well, you know, that their, you know, genius and kindness. Faculty are obsessed with sorting. It's like the bell curve was their mom or something. From their bar mitzvah. They love sorting and they like believe in it really deeply in their soul.
I want to show you the slide that we used to pull up, which is, this guy here. So these are like motivational slides. So in the normal deck, I have like 15 more slides that talk about why to do this and try to convince hearts and minds. And we've kind of had some of these webinars at conferences and in our own institutions to try to change these minds. So part of it is building into, do you believe fundamentally that all students can succeed? Do you believe that all students could? It's basically, it's a move to competency-based learning, which is, if you think that the curve is the end all and be all, that's all we should live in, then that feels like if you were running a pilot's license organization, you would say, well, this year's class, no one can land a plane, but we're going to give the A's to the top 10% and give them their degrees. That makes no sense. Or if you're working for the DMV and everybody passes a driving exam, sorry, only 10% can get the driving test this year. The rest of the 90, even though you pass the exam, can't get it. That also makes no sense. So there's a little bit of like, why are you doing a curve-based system when it should just be about, can you pass this competency, and couldn't all the students pass that competency? Now, part of that is institutional pressure because a new faculty comes in and they don't know how to judge their class. And so they say, well, there should be 10% A's and 30% B's and 10, whatever. They give you a suggested breakdown. We have that in our department too. As much as we have A's for all, this is a suggested breakdown, but it's clear that that is just a first pass. And after you get good at writing an exam that's just about the right stage, the next semester you should say, well, that's now I'm going to freeze that. These are the points you need to earn, and let's do this. So maybe for the first semester curve, because you don't know how hard an exam should be for that group of kids. But now that you know that, adjust it very quickly and throw that away and use an absolute graded system. There is a little bit of a star behind that, which is if you use an absolute graded system and give too hard an exam, then it might be one semester you have no A's. And so there's a little bit of a star, which is you can curve up, but not curve down. So you're still curving in some sense, you're still being read to your neighbors, but it doesn't say that one year I just happened to do the wrong thing and ask, PhD level questions in an intro class and no one passes them. I can still move you up, and so at the end of the day, parents and deans and everybody is happy and kind of it's right. So you can curve up, but if you never curve down, it means if you ever give an easy exam, that's on me, and you all got A's that semester because it's on me. So that's one thing we did for many, many years. Now that we have this full A's for all, we don't curve at all. We actually don't curve at all. And if I happen to give a hard exam or easy exam, that's there. I give you multiple chances. Like I really did all the reality is over time, if you have infinite submissions for projects and infinite deadlines, if you need more, another week, I'll give you another week. The average grade of the projects is basically 100%. Like every student is reaching mastery at these projects. And it's wonderful. You can actually ask a student, show me how you did it. Here's the code. It passes all the tests. It's just out there. And it's also because we've written auto graders, there's no more human in the loop. We've taken one of the benefits, actually go back to that. The benefits of auto graders is that it takes all the staff we used to pay to manually grade exams, and now they're one-on-one tutors. And so the world, looking back 5 years, we had 2 hours, 3 hours of office hours a week. Now we have 40, 45. That's amazing. Anytime you get confused, you go into the room and there's somebody there manning the space because the graders that used to be there are now being paid to help students. So much better system. In the back, and then, yeah, right, that's you. Yeah.
For some of the courses that were within a major, so not the one-off non-major courses, if you've been able to see downstream how the students that had your course did compared to ones that did not, and if you saw similar outcomes in the courses later on, because I do feel like faculty might be more convinced, oh, this is working, because we see that they're getting equal or better grades than the ones who didn't have this.
Yes, I think that's the best way to measure the success of this. We're still at the early stages, A. B, these are non-majors, so most of my students don't go on to be a CS major, they go other places, and hopefully they're happier. I can tell you clearly from the sentiment analysis of the qualitative feedback, it is a night and day switch in terms of the stress. I can't, like, it's the praise for these policies at the end of it's like there's a Maxell commercial back in the 70s where the person was blown away by the speakers, and the martini is spilling. Like, this is me receiving all of this praise for these policies. Like, I've never seen, I mean, the phrases, like, I can open up, I've never seen a class have more equitable, have more fair, more policies that are like the way education should be. I have so little stress. There is one star I want to add to this, which is if you have a lot of flexibility with your deadlines, but the students are taking 4 classes, 5 classes, and the other 4 have no flexibility, then every minute they're game theoretically thinking, what should I do with that minute? Well, chemistry has a project that has no wiggle room for a deadline, and calculus has no, and physics doesn't, but computer science does. So guess who takes the short end of the stick? The course that has flexibility. So one of the things that we saw that first semester, fall of 22, I'll tell you an experiment that went wrong, which was I walked into class and said, we're doing ACE for all. I had all these slides, we're doing this. And we have completely flexible deadlines. I will never take a point away for a late submission. The student raised their hand in the back and they said, does that mean we have no deadlines? No. We have deadlines, but if you need any more time, we'll give you that flexibility. You mean we have no deadlines, right? No, there are deadlines, and we kept going back like 4 or 5 times. Like, no, there are deadlines, but if you need more time, we'll give it to you on an individual basis. We're gonna say, yeah. You mean no deadlines, right? So the whole class walked away thinking no deadlines, and as a result, they weren't turning in their homework. They just kept saying, you know what? I don't have time. So like, it's almost like if you have a luggage, we're all gonna fly back home or whatever. And if you have one flexible thing and a lot of pieces of art of wood, those don't compress. That's the classes that have no flexibility, but the clothes, they'll get squashed because they're compressing. I felt like my class, other classes were sucking the air out of my class. If that's an analogy that works. So like they had no time for my class because I had no flexibility. I was the one to let them work beyond the semester. And I also said, and I'll let you work beyond the semester. So they already came in thinking, I'm gonna take 2 years to finish this class. And they didn't do the assignments. And so what some small group did, but most of them, to be very frank, didn't. It was really hard to see that. So I said, well, so once you're behind and once you're not doing the assignments, now all of a sudden you're not going to class anymore. It's a whole, it all stumbles. So we changed a couple things. One is we never announce no deadlines ever. I actually don't say A's for all until about later in the semester. So I let them think it's a normal, hard, rigid class. I do say, if you ever need time for an assignment, ask me and we'll have a conversation. I don't say it's an automatic yes. By the way, you close the door. It's always been yes, but I don't tell them it's always going to be yes. Because it could be, they say, hey, I play video games all weekend. I might say no then. I mean, I want to allow myself the legal opportunity to say no to an extension, but we've always said yes. By the way, this is called a flex extension system. There's a whole paper and tour about it. It's a really very nice system. I'll just give you a very brief summary. You specify so here's the deadline. You specify what the next deadline is to have an automatic pre-approved extension. It could be 2 days, 1 day, a week. So you say, if you ask me for an extension within that window, I only need 3 days and it's a week, then that's less than a week. 3 days less than a week. So that means it's pre-approved. No conversation. We just have to log it through a Google form, a little friction, you got to fill in a form. That was part 1. So one, there's a pre-approved line that you can change as an instructor. I can make it 3 days, I can make it a week, make it 2 weeks. And then if it's past that, how much time do you need? 10 days. Well, that's more than a week. It triggers a conversation with the TA over Zoom or face-to-face, where they want to know, how are you doing? Are you okay? Oh, and all of a sudden that you get a TA who has great empathy and a high emotional quotient. And so that TA is checking in with you. How are you doing? Oh, I had COVID. And they're having a real conversation with a real human. Remember, at scale, I'm teaching hundreds and hundreds of students. To have somebody care about you and ask you about that, so you need to prove that you need a deadline, but to be able to check in and point you to resources. Oh, you've been sick. Have you sniffles? Have you gone to the Tang Center to get checked with the thing because COVID's going around? And we're here. Here's some resources. Here's maybe some mental health resources. We're directing people. They've been so thankful that people actually care to do that. And at the end of the day, let's make a plan. You need 10 days? Let's make a plan. Okay, in 5 days, we'll get this much done. In 7 days, we'll get this much. So that plan that one-on-one human element is so important. So that's the key to flex extensions, is you're not saying it's whatever, no deadlines at all. It's saying here's a window, less than it for free, but you have to fill in a form. After that, it's a conversation. We're probably gonna say yes, but we could say no. So that's critical. We added that. We also mandated attendance. So one of the things that, like, if students are keeping up with the class, then they're gonna do well. If they're kind of blowing the class, not coming in, so it's all, they don't have any deadlines, nobody cares, like, nobody cares about me. No, we care about you. We gotta care that you're in the room and learning about, so keeping them on pace helps as well. So those two things are much better than that. No deadlines, no deadlines, no deadlines, A's for all at the beginning. So you have to really worry about your messaging to have this succeed. Yeah, that's important.
So
Other
are you
questions?
dropping students for not attending?
You say dropping?
Yeah.
Not dropping students for not attending. They have a small fraction of their overall grade, remember, students' points, that is for just attending. If you attend and click on iClicker, then you get those points. It's for free, basically free points for your final grade if you attend. And if you don't, it is the case that people get sick. If you don't, then you have to watch the video and then answer a set of questions. So we still support students who can't make it, but there's only a certain number of those they can do to still do that. So like that has really helped in terms of keeping students on track for that. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah, please.
Question. So I felt it, correct me if I'm wrong, so all of your grading is automated there?
Yes. We
So
have one project that isn't automated grading. It's a final project. They can do anything they want to. It's like the final fun creative project, make a game or an app or a tutorial, and that's hand graded. But we have a regrade. So even with, we have a hand graded thing, we have a rubric, and when they lose points, I say, listen, be very clear why they lose points. And if the students want to regrade, remember, every chance is for regrading. The students have to say, here's where I've fixed it here, fixed it here, fixed it there, and my TAs have the time to go through on the students say, these three things are where I fixed it. So it's rather than regrade from the beginning, they just look at those three pieces. Yep, points back. And so basically people get a second chance for that. For every hand graded essay, we give them one retake, but not infinite retakes, because that's a human involved.
the question was, if it's not automatic, do you think we can do this in large scale like you are doing it? Or can it be adapted? Because I would like to learn, how can
Yes.
we do this when you don't have automation to wait for your generate questions and so on? Or can it be adapted somehow in that scenario?
So, we've been giving these seminars to folks who are not in STEM, and they say, we love this idea, we'll do most of them, but we can't do the automated thing because we have to be able to hand grade the essay, hand grade the mathematical proof. There's a lot of elements of that. Many of these, maybe not all 10 can be done, but untimed exams, you could have an untimed exam with math and an essay. So there's a lot of these things you can do that are in that. I would say start baby steps. One of the things to say, walk out of here with an idea that it's not all or nothing. Either you do all 10 or I'm not happy. No, start with one, and the next semester add a second, add a third. So here's a list, see how many you can do. And again, we have tools to help you with that. Writing autograders is a challenge, and writing autograders is hard, but also a fun research project for a student or two or three or team or a master's group. So start with baby steps, and when you get to thinking about autograders, bring in a team of students to maybe say, hey, autograde one project or one lab. Start small and see how it works. And if that works, go to the next one. We used to hand grade all of our computer programming problems. And now, that was 10 years ago. Now every single one is autograded except for the one that's a free final project you do anything. So like we went from no autograders to almost every one autograded. So it takes a while to get there, and just start slowly. Take little bites out of it, I would say. Thank you for that. Yeah, Ira.
First off, I love the idea behind this.
Yeah.
Think about like, mastery, Hall of Fame athlete.
Yeah.
PhD dissertations, nobody asked, like, what did you get done in the first year?
Right.
Right, everybody looks at the end product.
Yes.
What I'm wondering about, since you're doing this for non-majors, getting now back into the institutional types of questions, have you had discussions about extending this concept to major, majors, departments and course series where completing course 1A allows you to take course 1B, and working beyond the term might interfere with that? What kinds of thoughts do you guys have about that?
Have some conversations. You
Like I was explicitly told I could not let students take an I and continue work past the semester. So that is definitely a concern to the CSU, where the chancellor is really pushing for your graduation rates. So I don't really have an answer, to that, Dan.
Well, the deans, I had a meeting with our dean, not Dean Chase, but Dean Sujin King Lu, who said, I love your idea. I pitched a slide deck to her. She said, I love this idea. In fact, the reason we're all here is that she gave me 6 years ago a professional development and brought Joe Feldman in, who wrote the book Grading for Equity. And I met Joe and I got a signed copy, and I was like, I need to do this. Like, I walked away as a changed religious man. Like, this is it. I found religion. So I said to Dean Lu, I said, I'm here because of you. You sent me to the PD. I've attended the PD. I'm now doing what the PD told me to do. You have to at least give me a little love on this. And she said, my only concern is extending graduation rates. If all of a sudden every engineer is taking 5 years to graduate rather than 4, then it's like 20% fewer engineers we can have in the system. That's not cool. And I said, I think this is really crucial for intro courses, maybe intro majors courses. That's part 1. Part 2, I said, there's a lot of time in the summer between the last day of at least the Berkeley. We end in April. We don't start until, almost September. There's a lot of time for students over the summer. They're still doing internship, but in the evenings, they're finishing up that course. There's no reason they couldn't achieve mastery in that 3+ months over the summer, or almost a full month in the winter. So I said, I think if they're just a little bit off of mastery, they got to be, they want an A, they want to be able to, like, imagine calculus, some base fundamental thing you're going to use in all these engineering classes. Don't you want to have mastery of calculus? But they didn't have it. Don't you want to support that? She says, yes. I said, well, you need to give them time to do that. And the fact that they couldn't get an A in the 15 weeks says they couldn't learn at the pace that we delivered the material on. So what else do you want me to do? I'm not, do you want to have your pilot be a B pilot or an A pilot? Just like an A person building your bridge, an A engineer or an A. Well, then we got to give them the time it takes. And so the question about does it delay what they're doing? That would probably be a very good conversation to have with the next instructor. Be very explicit. Look, if the only thing missing for me, I've done almost all the things. I've got an A, I'm working for an A+. I've got an B, I'm working for an A+. So if they get a B, they can take the next class. That doesn't prevent them from enrolling in the next class. They're still mastering that last piece of it, but they got a B. I mean, the fact you got a B on the books, they're still in the next class succeeding. Maybe not if that B was important for the next thing that they're doing, but the point is they're still trying to master that last material over that week. What isn't a challenge is, imagine a kid takes an incomplete in all 4 classes first term freshman year. That kid is not going to succeed both finishing 4 classes and taking 4 new classes. So it's really on a 1-by-1 basis. Hopefully the kid puts the eggs in the basket to finish the classes that are important. And this one I need some more time on, or it's really important to me. That's 1 class they'll get one of these incompletes or not yet proficient. Our registrar says, don't use incomplete, use the word not yet proficient, which is some kind of conversational way that in the system, it'll know that you took the class, you passed it, but you weren't at the level that you want it to be. Your proficiency might be determined by the instructor or by the student. And so there's that. So that would allow the student to register for the next semester, but allow them to still work on the last semester's material and then auto submit it. And all the automation is still in the submission process. We talked about the director on the right, but they're working with PrairieLearn, which means there's no human in the book. None of my staff is involved in handling the student as they're submitting it to the auto grader. That's the key reason the auto grader, they're doing that. The other thing we've added is we allow the students to take next semester's exams. So let's say that the projects are fine. They aced all the projects, but it's the exams they couldn't get. So if I'm having their grade be the max of, say, 5 midterms, I allowed my students last spring to have 5 midterms, 4 retakes, 1 initial midterm and 4 retakes, each of which had 10 questions, all the same topics, same 10 topics, same 10 topics. That's the grade is the max across all of the exams for each topic. What's the highest on the first topic? Recursion. Well, this one is, you got 0, then you got a half credit, then you got aced it. Well, then you got full credit on recursion. Check. Go to the next topic. So it's the max across all the topics. So my students haven't achieved full mastery on that exam, that midterm. Like, knowledge is what you can do and what you know. And so what you can do maybe is the project, and what you know is maybe the exam, just roughly, okay, in rough buckets. So in the exam, I'm trying to say what you know, you didn't prove that you had matching what you know. So the next semester, I write a new midterm. It's always a new midterm every semester. That's my job, to write a new midterm. So I have a new midterm. That becomes the 6th midterm. And the spreadsheet just maxes across 6 rather than mastering across 5. So there's no reason a student couldn't be in the next semester's class, be learning all these next level things. And what? I got to take midterm for last semester's class. You take the midterm, you crush it. because now you learn new things and you're there and you have more maturity. And now that just becomes the sixth one I take a max over and it's all done. It's all automated. So this does work at scale for students and to not slow them down in the process of continuing on their academic journey. So long answer to a great question, which is, we think we can make it work. We can make it work. And I'm looking at 11:40. Folks, thank you so much for attending this session. Please fill out the feedback form on Huva. There's a feedback with a little bit of a form to tell us how we did. Thank you so much for this, folks. That was really great.